and welcome to another episode of Chilies in a Bottle. My name's Gabriel. It's been a long time since I've made any videos, but while I've been busy, I'd like to say hello to those of you who've subscribed in the last couple of months. I'll try not to disappoint. And to those of you who've been watching my videos for a while, welcome back. I'd like to introduce you to this machine I'm standing in front of. This is a Reid 2B surface grinder. And from what I can tell, this is the top of the line machine from this period of their surface grinder building. What makes this machine a 2B is this part of it right here. It's a motor-driven power cross-feed with knockoff. What that means is you'll throw this lever down and the machine will cause the table to traverse until one of these dogs hits the knockout pin, and then the power feeding will stop. What I've had to do was clean out a lot of black grease and grinding dust. The last chop ran grease, and grease tends to grab dust and grab chips, and so there's a lot of that to clean out of here. And here it is. Well, kind of. Let me tell you something. Moving day went fine, except for the last 10 feet. We had it on a pallet jack, and it wasn't strapped to the pallet, which was a big mistake. Coming down the hallway, it fell right onto its back. And here we are, just like in the first video I made. We've just lifted a machine off of its back, and now we're going to begin fixing it up and putting it back together. Actually, and it's in the T-slot, so this will just come right out. All right. All right. All right. I'm going all in on this, so we're going to get this cleaned off, grinding dusted, and it comes off okay. Okay, we got pins to locate it too. There we go. All right. And so far, removing all this stuff came out fine. This will get cleaned off and put back together. Until I got to this point, I didn't realize that there was a set screw. I couldn't see it, and I thought I just had to keep on cranking on that bearing adjusting nut. So here is our crossfeed nut. Here are our bearings that we removed. And here's my project for the weekend, to make a new bearing adjusting nut. Well, I figured it out. In order for me to fix the screw up I made with the bearing nut, I've got to chase the existing thread onto the new section that I brazed on. And in order for that, I have to pick up the thread on the lathe. And so I did a lot of test pieces learning how to pick up and chase a thread on the lathe, using nylon, naturally, because nylon cuts so easily. My test was to thread one section, take it out, flip it around, find the thread all over again, and then turn another section into the same thread. And what I learned was I've got to keep the half nuts engaged once I pick up the old thread after flipping it around, I've got to keep them engaged the whole time. That, and I'm using just the cross slide to feed in and not feeding in with the compound. Maybe that's just my lathe and maybe that's just me, but that's what's working, and this is my practical test to show that the two threads are in fact continuous. And after this here, I kind of moved on to something closer to the real thing. This is a piece of aluminum that I shrunk fit onto this steel rod, and the new bearing nut will thread on past the old section onto the new section just fine. So with that out of the way, I think I'm pretty confident to move on to the real thing. And now the real thing. Here we go. Let's see if this will fit on there. Oh yeah, it will. Here's our new nut, and it goes on just fine. All right. Yeah. Yeah, teensy bit of slop. But there we go. I've corrected my mistake. Well, there we are. That's the end of this part of the restoration, at least. People tell me it's okay to make mistakes so long as you fix them. I'm glad I was able to fix this one. If you've been enjoying my videos, you might also enjoy some videos by channels that I've been watching. The first is Reid, a guy in Washington, and he's been putting out videos quite often, usually several times in a week, and pretty often more than one in a day. I can say I've learned a lot from Reid, at least on the subject of scraping paint, but also on tool making, and in particular and related to the whole carbide paint scraper thing, is brazing carbide on as your own cutting tools. The next is Machine Nut Dell, a guy in England, woodworker and a machinist as well. Lately he's been making what you'd call automatons, moving mechanical kind of puppet-like things. Kind of makes you want to do some woodworking yourself. A little bit of an oddball, but hey, he's got a sense of humor. Chances are you're already watching Jeremy Makes Things. His channel has grown a lot since I've started watching it. And everyone has something that makes his channel unique. And Jeremy's is that he's access to this woods where machines were dumped, and his style is to make his projects out of the salvaged iron and steel you find in the woods there. So it worked before, but now it's nice and clean and oiled up. When you want to engage the power longitudinal feed, you'll throw the lever down, and the table will traverse longitudinally and approach the stop pin until one of the dogs hits it, knocks it out, and the table will stop it power feeding. We can now move on to the saddle. Reid calls it the cross slide. We've got plenty of our black grease and grinding dust, even on the ways, which is the worst place where they could have been. I'm even getting some scratches and some little gouges in here, so that's not good. Now that it's all cleaned up, you can really see a lot better this crack in this section of the bracket. and you can see the plate that they use to fix it with. Well, I didn't want to do it, but once you get started, you really can't stop. I'm scraping the paint off of this. I'm just taking a break right now because it's a lot of work, a lot of time that goes into it too. I'm taking a page out of Donnie's book, and I've got a piece of brazed carbide lathe tooling. I didn't braze it to this piece of steel. I just opened it up and shoved it inside this piece of tubing. Doing a combination of scraping the paint off and power tools and paint stripping paste. It's a lot of work, but I want to do a good job so that it stays good until the next guy's got this machine. There's the first coat of primer, and I'm going to end up doing more than one coat of primer at least. Now that this is on here, I can kind of see any voids, and I can see little bumps that I missed when I was stripping. So that'll show me where I ought to put some body filler or knock down those bumps. Here's the first coat, and I've really changed my mind about this color. It's a really cool color, I think. It's just not what I'm going for. I think there's something, I don't know why, but there's something kind of British about this very dark gray kind of color. I feel like I've seen some kind of classic British car that has painted this color. But anyway, what I'm really going for is more of a kind of medium gray, like what you would see on kind of a little bit older machinery. Something more like what the Boyce Crane is painted to. I've got my color mixed up with some Japan dryer, and we're going to roll this on. Yeah, this is more like it. Okay, I do believe that's everything on this part of the machine. And now this color, yeah, this is what a machine ought to look like. We've got another Timken roller bearing on the inside there. And we've got the replacement bearing adjustment nut that we made. There it is, no end play and not too tight. So in this little cutout on the bottom of the casting here is where we can put our hex key to tighten the set screw. This gear on the pawl extends beyond this, so I expect there's going to be some play that the yoke will be just free like that. Here's our key. And then we get the ratchet. This is what the little fingers on the pawl will interact with. At this point, I can also put on the hand wheel, although I expect I'll have to take it off. Alright. I've got a groove tapered pin. I can see the hole in the shaft and the hole in the gear lined up. And of course they're lined up because we've got a key in there. But I will just drive this in. Got a long piece of brass. And the grooved side on the grooved pin is always the larger side. This ratchet goes in next. It screws onto this gear. Next comes the front plate assembly, which consists of the crank, the feed pawl case, and a shaft with our roller bearings. This shaft also has to go in there as well. And the tricky part, besides just getting these locating pins lined up with their holes, is these latches for the pawl will get in the way, and so I've got a rubber band sort of keeping them, extended away from it. And when it gets on and I know that it's in the right spot, I'll just reach in there somehow and snip the rubber band. This is still going to be tricky, and I might just bring you back when this thing is in place, because it will take a long time, I expect. There it goes. Alright, so the way you do it, and I'm sorry you can't see this at all, but if you rotate the ends of these latches for the pawl all the way to 3 o'clock, you can reach in with your hand and just compress them and keep them from getting in the way of that ratchet gear. Okay, next comes this T-bolt that goes into the crank and the rack, and they've got to go on together. Not a whole lot left to do. We've got our woodruff key there and our hand wheel. This washer that serves the double duty of bringing the shaft in contact with the, squeezing the bearings together. I've got the saddle on now with a little bit of help from my co-worker, and I'm ready to put back everything I had to take off when I had to paint this thing. Now that everything else is out of the way, let's plug this thing in and fire it up. It helps to push the right button. Sorry. I've ruined the surprise. Anyway though, let's pretend like this is the first time that I'm firing it up. There we go. Well, I'm pretty pleased with what I'm seeing. It looks like a surface grinder. It sounds like a surface grinder, and it smells like a surface grinder. But there's more that's got to be done in order for this machine to do what it's really capable of. We've got to level the machine. We've got to address these guards. And some other things certainly that I will discover. And for that we'll take a look at in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.